أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم. I would like to start this with the universal greetings in Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. May peace and blessings of the Almighty Allah be upon each and every one of you. We will start this seminar on marriage in Islam with a short recitation from the Holy Quran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. On behalf of Ansaar Foundation, I would like to welcome each and every one of you, those who are here, as well as those who have joined us virtually. Today is the third session of marriage in Islam. And before I go on, let me just go over the Ansaar Foundation. What does Ansaar Foundation stand for? Ansaar Foundation was founded in 2004, and it's a registered Canadian charity which aims to reduce poverty and empower lives. It serves people of all faiths, races, religion, ethnicities, abilities, and gender. It runs programs for seniors, for women, for youth, new immigrants, and many more. I would like to urge each and every one of you to please visit their website at www.ansarfoundation.com and donate generously to its programs and supporting reduce poverty. As we start this program, I want to make a disclaimer. All views presented here are those of the individuals and may not necessarily be the views of Ansaar Foundation. With the nature of the topic such as marriage in Islam, there may be more than one ruling or opinion regarding an issue. For any personal issues, please refer to your Imam for clarification. Now, getting back to our workshop series, just to let you know that we were getting a lot of questions in regards to marriage in Islam here at the Ansaar Foundation. And so we decided that we should organize workshops that would address some of those questions and inform the community in regards to marriage in Islam, hence these workshops. So it's a series of 5 workshops that we have identified at this time. It could increase, but right now we are sticking to this 5. And we first focused on the premarital aspect of marriage in Islam in regards to why marriage. Why does one person have to marry? We talked about choosing a spouse and some relevant questions to be addressed before saying yes to any partner or any person. The second workshop, that was the last week, we addressed the big day, and that had to do with pre-Nikah requirements. Now, we didn't talk about micro-wedding or macro-wedding, which we will do today, and the reception, because there was so much discussion in the last workshop that we were not able to address these 2 issues, which we will address today, inshallah. And so with that, the third workshop is going to be on post-honeymoon, life after Nikah, common problems in marriage, and we'll give you some tips to successful marriage, and thereafter address some of the questions that you may have. We will also talk about duties and responsibilities, which is such a big thing in a married couple's life. lives. The fourth, that's what we are going to do today. The fourth workshop is going to be on the rights and obligations, respectable marriage or devilish divorce. We'll also talk about prenuptial contract and some conflict resolution ideas and suggestions. The fifth workshop is going to be making marriage everlasting or never lasting. Is your marriage missing that spark? We'll talk about that. And a Muslim woman's option to seek talaq. We will also talk about advanced care preparation, such as the will and power of attorney preparation. And then once again, address the question and answers issues. Now, talking about our presenters, we have really informed, educated presenters today, as we had in the last two workshops. Our Imam, Dr. Abdul Hai Patel, has been a key member in our community here. He has been serving as an Imam and community leader for the past 52 years in Canada. He's a founding member of many organizations such as the Canadian Council of Muslims or Canadian Council of Imams, Ansaar Foundation, and Muslim Children's Aid and Support Services.
I don't think you need to read the whole thing.
Imam Patel
Put it on the
is a
slide.
recipient of Governor General and Ontario Government's Award for Community Services and Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal. He holds a doctorate degree from the Canadian Institute of Islamic Studies. Our next presenter or panelist is Rufaida Muhammad. Rufaida is a social worker and a nonprofit organizational strategist. Currently, she works as a mental health clinician at Trillium Health Partner. She has previously worked for a number of nonprofit organizations and has developed international workshops in mental health and web therapy platforms. And the third presenter is myself, Dr. Abdul Hamid Hatiani. I've done my PhD from the University of Toronto and have over 30 years of experience in the social service sector. Having said that, let's get to our session number 3, the post-honeymoon. So we will continue with the follow-up from the last week and then get into micro and macro wedding. We'll talk about the khutbatun nikah and the walima. We'll thereafter talk about life after nikah, some common problems in a marriage, and tips to a successful marriage. So we'll give some tips as to, how to have a successful marriage.
So we need to go back a little bit.
And yes, I'll come to that.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about duties and responsibilities as well. Now, as I said, we will follow up from last week's session, and we had a question from the last week's workshop, and the question was to get into more details in regards to finding a partner. And I would like to request Imam Patel to add more to this. Imam Patel.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to everyone who is on Zoom and here in person. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa ala aqibatu lil muttaqin wa salatu wa salam ala rasulihil kareem Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Yes, this topic about, we discussed last time about where you can find, how to find spouse. In a society like this, people don't know each other. Sometimes they meet families. They have all the things we discussed and pointed out by Sister Rufeda and Dr. Abdul Hamid Hatiani as well about checking all the background and things. But the most obvious question comes from our millennials is how to meet Islamically your future spouse. Often people call it halal dating, but there is no dating in Islam, and dating word will confuse people right away because the Western concept of dating is meeting and going beyond whatever relationship that they may. Can you please hold all the questions till the end today? Because last time we spent a lot of time discussing and leave the topic. So I request everyone to put hold your questions till the end so we can respond properly and also explain some of the other things as we also consider the constraint of time. The halal way to meet people. Now, you don't, what most people here in Canada do, non-Muslims, would they would go to a bar, those who drink, and for meet people or dancing to clubs and so on. That is all prohibited in Islam. People meet sometime in masjid or in gatherings or so on, but you can meet your partner at home or anywhere, but in the presence of another adult, Islamically, because meeting a non-Muslim, although you probably working with the same person in your office or workplace, in a factory or any in a store, and you meet that person, already. But as far as those who want, you don't know who the person is. Parents may suggest, or somebody may say that there's someone you can meet. So it is not that's the way people call it arranged marriage, but it's no arranged marriage as such. There are arranged marriages taking place, but Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said very clearly, have you seen your spouse? Have you met your spouse? So if you have seen, you must see your spouse, who she is or who he is. Not that usually women, many people try to shield them. And that is not Islamic either. So Islam encourages you to see who you are going to be your life partner. So that is allowed. But when they meet each other and as just two of them, there should be a third person, maybe a small sister or brother or another even adult if it's permitted. So you can ask number of questions that were put here in the last session. This will all be available on the YouTube later on as well, inshallah. So we will, after editing and reviewing them. So this is where, you can ask the question, and that requires meeting separately with your future partner. So that is the halal way of meeting them, is in presence of someone, whether a small underage brother or sister, or even that is okay, or even adult, if it is okay to do that. So that way you get to know that person. You can ask the necessary questions, and if required, you can meet again and again. But what is happening nowadays is number of youngsters, especially millennials, they are meeting, they are going out together at maybe a concert or somewhere else, and that is Islamically is not permitted. That you are not married, you are kind of courting that person together, and this is not Islamic in such a true sense. So what people are doing is, okay, parents say they are going out together anyway for dinner and for other events, so let's get them married. And then the rukhsati, the getting them together for consummation of marriage, is deferred for sometimes 6 months, a year, or even 2 years until the studies are complete. Then says, okay, until they graduate, then they can marry. Now, all this time, they are married Islamically, but that marriage puts obligations on each other as husband and wife. This is where people are forgetting. Because if anything even happens during that, Allah not willing, if one of them die, that woman has an inheritance right in that husband property or assets as well. So while they are married but not living together, that is not a marriage, people in the eyes of the people. But Islamically, they are really obligated to each other as husband and wife. So they can consume the marriage as well if they want, and they can then, which many of them do. Sometimes they get pregnant before the reception, that departure, rukhsati as it is generally called. So this is, people have to be careful about keeping the social distance before nikah or anything, as well as remembering their obligations as husband and wife. It's become a common practice, not just in Canada, but in other countries as well, because nowadays this has become very a common practice that, okay, they go out together as the courtship develops and so on. So this is something that we must remember, the Islamic boundaries about meeting your future spouse. And this, you can explore more and search that how am I committing a sin while meeting my future partner. And that is what counts in the eyes of the angels, that they can record. And on the day of judgment, you will be held accountable for that. So this is, let us be more responsible in this area. I'm just pointing out the dangers of doing such things and where the boundaries should be respected, which I hope you will observe, inshallah.
Jazakallah
If
khairan.
Sister Rufeda want to add anything on this,
Yeah,
and you may want to.
Jazakallah khairan. Sister Rufeda, who is joining us through Zoom. Sister Rufeda, you want to add anything to this at this time?
I think Imam Abdul Hai has done a really great job. So thank you. I'm good.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And so moving on, now that, we talked about the pre-marriage issues, pre-marriage requirements, having prepared yourself, having identified your future partner. And so now is the time, both of you have agreed to be together for the rest of your lives. And so here comes the time of deciding for that big day. Now that big day for some is a really big day. Some people may have dreamt of that big day for a long, long time. And so there's a lot that goes into preparing and organizing that big day. And so when we talk of whether we want to have a micro wedding or do we want to have a macro wedding, and we talk of micro wedding, it means having a smaller wedding or having a big, large wedding. And so when we are deciding this, there are certain aspects that we need to be aware of. First and foremost, after the two parties have agreed, that they're going to get married, when are they going to get married? Are they going to get married in a few days' time, in a few weeks' time, or a few months' time? And that's something that it has to be mutually agreed upon. And whatever I tell you right now, it's all to do with mutual agreement, mutual consultation, and mutual acceptance. So, after deciding when do you want to get married, and whether, and my suggestion would be, as Imam Patel has said, please do not delay. Once you have decided you're going to get married, do not delay in having the nikah or having the marriage ceremony. Having a delay can create lots of other issues. It can create a lot of other problems as well. So when you are going to have the wedding must be decided. The other thing is, where are you going to have that wedding? Are you going to have that wedding in a small little house? Are you going to have a wedding at your home? Are you going to have a wedding at the masjid? Or are you going to have the wedding in a big banquet hall or in a park or in a yard? That's something to be decided as well. And people when they come together to decide, they come with their own ideas and their own perceptions of how that day is going to look like. And these are things that need to be sorted out at the beginning. It needs to be talked about at the beginning. Then we need to get into how big is that wedding going to be? Is that wedding going to have only the family members, 5 members, 10 members? Or is it going to have 500 people or 1,000 people? I've been to weddings that are very small, family oriented with only, 8, 10 people. And I've seen weddings that have like 1,000 people or 1,500 people. And so this needs to be decided. And then who is going to be at that wedding? How are we going to invite the guests? Who will be the guests at the wedding? Who will be the imam who is going to conduct that wedding? And when we talk of who will be at the wedding, again, it has to be decided. The boys' side may say, we need these many people at the wedding. The girls' side might decide, we need to have this many number of people. And sometimes it becomes a bone of contention. And so these are things to be sorted out amicably, and there's got to be some consensus as to this is how we are going to have the wedding, and these are the number of people that will be at the wedding. The other important thing is, what will that wedding look like? And a couple of weeks ago, we attended a wedding where there was just the nikah ceremony and the khutbah, the translation of the khutbah, and that's about it. And after that, there was the wedding reception. simple, and that was it. And I've been to weddings where it takes hours, for them to complete that wedding. There is different aspects. They bring in, drummers and dancers, and, there's different things. So that needs to be sorted out, and that needs to be decided as to which type of wedding, how we are going to have that, what type of food is going to be there. Some might say we want, in Indian Pakistani type of food. Others will say we want to have Canadian type of food, or we want to have Afghani food, or we have to have Chinese food, or whatever. That needs to be also talked about and decided and sorted out, right? And finally, the most important, who's going to pay for it? Who's going to pay for it? And that's important, because the wedding can cost somebody, from a few $100s to hundreds of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands. Yes, tens of thousands, we can say. And who's going to pay for it? Which side is going to pay for it? How are they going to take care of those payments at that time and afterwards as well, right? And so these are important things that need to be decided, for the wedding, whether you're going to have a micro wedding or you're going to have a macro wedding, the big wedding or the small wedding. And then once the wedding has been decided, now we are at that wedding reception. All of us are seated. There's the wedding reception. There is the imam, and the imam is going to recite then the nikah khutbah. The imam is going to recite the khutbah. And for that, I would like to ask once again our imam, who has conducted hundreds of weddings, to talk to us about the nikah khutbah and to explain to us what does that khutbah mean. Inshallah. Imam Patel, to you.
Yes, thank you. Before we go into the khutbah, there are a couple of other points that I would like to make here, because the points of contention in the arrangement of the marriage. Now, there are a lot of cultural traditions that people have. Canada is not one Muslim community. We are Muslim communities. There are people from all different backgrounds, different cultures, different nationalities that have come here. So this, in their country, whatever the customs may be, that said, okay, especially I'm referring particularly to the Indo-Pak subcontinent, that they said, okay, you have to give this many clothes or this much gold over and above the mahar. So this is something that our millennials, who may not be in a position to give such things, or sometimes they said, do we have to? Because they know Islamically, the only thing that a husband's supposed to give to the wife is mahar. And I talk about that in the last session quite in detail about there is no minimum or a maximum, but you have to be reasonable how much you can give that the person can accept. And that mahar amount should be disclosed to the bride by the husband or the guardians or the wakil that is there. It doesn't have to be announced at the time of the nikah. They can just say mutually agreed upon. But people like to show off and say, no, you don't have to pay, but it's $50,000 or $100,000 mahar. And that time the groom may not even have $1,000 or $2,000 in the account. So that deferred amount, and Muslim women have taken husbands to court in matters of divorce, which I'll talk about when we get to divorce. And I mentioned briefly some examples about the Manitoba court and how they decided, and the Ottawa court. So there are cases in our court in Ontario, many cases still pending on mahar, because mahar amount is not mentioned in the license of the marriage certificate given by the Ontario registrar or other provinces. So usually masajids have a certificate, or the imam have their own that can give another paper saying that the mahar amount is this much, cash paid or deferred, that is spelled out. So this is important for the bride to know, especially that. But as far as the clash of the amount or the number of things to give is all cultural. Only the mahar part is Islamically that is needed for a nikah. The others they can give, sure, yeah, because you are already getting a future partner. So whether it is gold or other jewelry that you can give, all that, but the mahar, it remains the property of the bride. But if the anything else given as part of the mahar, for example, if there are 20 ounces of gold given and say this is the mahar, that is considered mahar, or mahar amount is this, and then extra gold jewelry or other stocks or whatever they can give to the bride. And if that is to be part of the mahar, then it becomes her property. But if it is not mentioned that this is I'm giving over and above this, it is optional. And in case of marriage breakup, the husband can demand that if needed and to give back. But these are some contentious issues that we must be aware of. The second thing about the cost, you explained that how much, because who pays and all this is always people get into this problem that no, we are not going to pay this much for reception. Now a lot of people have joint reception, both husband and wife. Usually the parents pay for it most of the time or arrange, but all those agreements should be worked out in detail. So there is no argument after the nikah. This is important for healthy marriage because often the parents fight over that, not the husband or wife that now become that the nikah is done. So now hold your questions, please. If you have any questions in this regard or any examples till the end, we can. The nikah khutbah. Now, at the time, the nikah khutbah is really a sunnah. Nikah can be done without khutbah too, but it is a sunnah. We follow the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in our life. And this is a special occasion for people coming together. And we must, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, choose to recite the khutbah at the time of nikah. So it's a very important sunnah that we must fulfill. And it is something that at the time of the nikah, usually the bride and groom both await, let's get over with this. So nobody pays attention. And it is, people regard this as just a ceremonial ritual that says, okay, the sunnah is fulfilled by reciting the Quranic verses. But what those Quranic verses that Rasulullah chose to recite in the nikah khutbah, very people have clues, very little clues. I'm talking about even people who know the Arabic and do the translation of those ayah. Still, what those ayah implies, what lessons we learn from them, why Rasulullah chose those few verses. Whole Quran is a guidance for humanity, guidance for us. But at the time of the nikah, not just to save time, but few ayahs, there are other ayahs as well, but Rasulullah chose certain number of ayahs at the time of the nikah. And usually we must understand the message from these ayahs. And one of the ayahs that Rasulullah chose was from Surah Rum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Min ayatihi an khalaqa lakum min anfusikum azwajan litaskunu ilayha wa ja'ala bainakum mawadda inna fi dhalika laayatin liqawmin yatafakkarun. And the translation, among his signs is this, that he created for you wives from among yourselves, that you may dwell in tranquility with them. That is translated here azwaj as azwajan means wife or spouse in some cases, because English, the language, doesn't translate the Arabic text fully in number of ayahs. And he has put love and mercy between you. Verily, in that are signs for those who reflect. Here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sanctions the union of male and female in what we call marriage. Purpose is to describe here that they live in tranquility. That is to say, the life will be comfortable together. But to do that, Allah says He has put mawadda, love and mercy in the hearts of both. Not just coming together. Coming together can live forever. But if they don't have the love in marriage, the most important ingredient, then how that love comes about? Allah says He has already committed to do that. وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً. That's it. After coming together, Allah said it is like a zip file. We know that can be unzipped for unlimited love and mercy. When a zip file is exploded, it comes up with a lot of data. So in the same way, in that love that is planted there, we have to unzip that. And to do that, it has to be on the is based on the relationship between each individual bride and the groom with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How their relationship, how their faith, iman is strong enough, how they believe in Allah, how they follow the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that love will be generated, exploded like a zip file in your marriage every moment, every day. And that is what makes marriage very successful, is to have that love. And Allah has already said that He has planted that love after coming together, after you choose your wife, your spouse. The next ayat Rasulullah also sometimes recited was, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha haqqa tuqatihi wa la tamutunna illa wa antum muslimun. O you who believe, observe your duty to Allah with right observances, and die not save as those who have surrendered. Die not except being a Muslim. Means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is here telling us to be conscious. Ittaqullah means to be conscious of Allah's presence in your life, just like we are conscious when we are fasting. And when we are in masjid, we know that Allah is watching over us. When we are doing certain good things, we expect Allah to be watching over us. So in all life, not just fasting, because fasting is that training exercise that we go through, that after Ramadan, remain conscious just like you have done during the Ramadan in a state of fasting. In the same way, that in your life as a husband and wife, remain conscious of Allah's presence at all time, and be honest in your relationship. Honesty is the most number one ingredient for successful marriage. That you have to be honest, open with one another. Don't hide anything from each other during your life. And then don't die except as a Muslim. So to remain Muslim all your life means to keep your iman alive at all time. Enrich your iman. That is doing good things, following the commands of Allah and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So our iman is increased day by day, and we become more conscious of Allah's presence. That motivates us to do all the good things and live a life as we should be living as a husband and wife, a loving relationship. It is not a one-way street. It is a reciprocal relationship that you can talk about when we talk about the balancing life in the next workshop. I believe it is that will come, inshallah. The other verse that Rasulullah chose also, from Surah Nisa, the women, opening verse. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ya ayyuhan nasu ttaqu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum min nafsin wahida wa khalaqa minha zawjaha wa batha minhuma rijalan kathiran wa nisaa wattaqullaha alladhi tasaaluna bihi wal arham inna Allaha kana alaykum raqiba. O mankind, be careful of your duty to your Lord, who created you from a single soul, and from it created its mate, and from them twain hath spread abroad a multitude of men and women. Be careful of your duty toward Allah, in whom you claim your rights of one another, and towards the wombs that bear you. Lo, Allah has been a watcher over you. This is a very important verse. I find that is very relevant at the time of the nikah, that Allah has reminded us once again to be conscious of His presence, but at the same time telling us that remember where we come from the first two human beings, Adam alayhi salam and Hawa alayhi salam. Their relationship produced a multitude of people. Humanity resulted from that. The population today, over how many billions that we have, and keeps increasing until Yawm al-Qiyamah. And they said, and all your life during that time, as a husband and wife, be careful of your duty to Allah, whom you claim your rights. The rights that we will be talking about, husband and wife, right, each other's responsibilities and rights, not just rights, but responsibilities that we must know. And also that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't forget the womb that bore you, means the mother. Now here is a signal that getting married does not mean that you are cutting off your relations with your parents, your mother. You are getting two more parents in marriage, the in-laws, as we call, the father-in-law and a mother-in-law. But especially a special emphasis placed here on the women, just like in nikah, that first bride's consent is essentially, which I talked about last time. Without the bride's consent, no marriage takes place. So there is no question of forced marriage, which a lot of time happens in our community, that nobody can be forced to marry anyone. And we must respect the rights of women that Allah has given, that Islam has promulgated, that the bride's consent must come first. And Allah says that don't forget the womb that bore you. It means how the relationship with a woman to an individual is so important that we, after marriage, don't cut off your relations. Don't maintain that relationship. Respect them as well, even though you may not like their advice at times. But that advice, you just have to think of what they are trying to say, whether it is good for you, and try to resolve amicably any disagreement, disputes. But not to say that, okay, my mother-in-law is harassing me all the time, I don't want to go there. Or that is why in the questions that were put forward here, it says important question is, what is your relationship with your parents and how they are going to be managing your marriage? that because a lot of times they interfere as well. So there are things that break up the marriage, which nobody wants to have. Then the obligations to the parents remain even after marriage, but it should not lead to the breakup of marriage. It has to be weighed and mutually understood and agreed on this as well. Then another verse, quickly going through this, is to Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha wa qulu qawlan sadida. That for successful marriage, oh, you who believe, Allah says, guard your duty to Allah and speak words straight to the point. The most important principle in marriage, as sociologists, social workers will say, Sister Rufeda can talk more about that, is how we communicate with each other. Communication is very important, and says speak straight to the point, don't hide anything, clarify any misunderstanding. And communication does not mean that you disrespect your spouse. Speak with respectable titles. Rasulullah used to address his wife with respectable titles as well, dear or whatever, honey, as it's used in this society here, that people learn. So use respectable names, respectable titles, even if you want to use a nickname, but have that name must be a respectable name, not something that is going to be embarrassing or insulting to anyone. Never insult your spouse in public. So communication is very important part of marriage, a married life, as a family life as well, which I think we can be talked more about that, inshallah. So this is another verse Rasulullah chose at the time of the nikah. So marriage means being in agreement. This is saying that, say, how can two people go to a journey together unless they have agreed to do so? And it is the same with marriage. When two individuals decide to get married, there has to be some level of agreement between them. They need to agree on how they will practice and express their faith and what they will teach their children. Sometimes these are some other questions that you can ask, because if a woman is wearing hijab or niqab, then after marriage, the husband can say, okay, take off your niqab. I'm embarrassed by your hijab or niqab. These are issues surfacing here. Sometimes people, the man would say, I want hijabi, but not zilbabi. So you can wear hijab, but not the long robe. So there are these questions that are surfacing in this community here among people, that all this agreement has to be worked out, that look, I wear a hijab, and after marriage, you can't tell me to take it off because it's Islamically required. That I'm trying to practice, I'm trying to be obedient to commands of Quran and the Sunnah of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So, and niqab is optional, according to some scholars, but some when say, no, I choose to do that. So you want me to continue, and you can't tell me no. So before marriage, all these things should be discussed and worked out so that there is no disagreement after. At the same time, in case of agreement cannot be reached, both partners should agree to disagree in mature way to try to reach compromise in case. Agreements can be reached and to avoid letting these things build up conflicts in the long run. Oneness does not happen automatically as you start living together. It requires a determined effort and considerable time spent together, getting to know one another deeply. So learn how to communicate effectively and how to resolve your conflicts sooner rather than later. You'll find your oneness and intimacy increasing. It is also important to define your expectations clearly and find the middle ground in decision making. A popular saying of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, in related to marriage, is narrated by Aisha radiallahu anha, that the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, the best of you is the best to his wives, and I'm the best of you to my wives, and whom your companion dies. And when your companion dies, leave him alone. Reported by Tirmizi, this hadith. So this is, I think, the little short explanation of the khutbah that people must listen. You can explore the tafsir of this more in the tafsir of this ayah later at your time. But now I think we go on to the next about the walima part, life after nikah.
So walima, Imam Sahib, what is walima?
Walima is basically, marriage is a festive occasion. And festive doesn't mean that you go and outside the boundaries of Islam. And you talk about the pre-wedding planning, reception, and so on. So can we have entertainment at wedding? Now, this is something that in 20th and 21st century, and 20th century in particular, different forms of entertainment have surfaced with the rise of TV, computers, and internet. Now, people have all different and different kind of rock music and others. So it becomes such a word, controversial word, I would say, that say, oh, entertainment. People think is just having all those dances and rock music and so on. No, entertainment is not prohibited in Islam because enjoyment is there, but within the limits. Certain types of enjoyment practice in some countries that they have at the time of the wedding, but in singing. Rasulullah one time was asked to invited to a wedding, and he even said, "Okay, they are ready." He says, "Hey, yeah, has the singing girls gone yet to do that?" So there was singing in Medina as well, but without the drums, maybe sometimes duff is used and other halal way of music. So you can have any entertainment display that is not violating the appropriate attire, clothing must be maintained during that entertainment, that body is not exposed by the opposite gender, so that this is halal and way of entertaining is allowed. And walima is a festive occasion that we can have, but is a celebrated next day after marriage is consummated, usually. And it is the groom reception. So that is something that they can have when food is served, people enjoy the reception and bless the marriage. Basically, it's an occasion for everyone to come and congratulate and bless the occasion. Make dua. That people often just say congratulations, shake hand, and leave. Says no, you have to give dua to the bride and the groom. Then may Allah make your marriage healthy, successful, and spiritually rich. All these things. So that's a dua that we must give to each one, and that is why they said that walima is important to do that. And if for some reason you cannot have it same day because of a distance, also whenever you can have it, but usually it is organized the next day after. So that is something. How much can you spend is up to the individual, but you can't go overboard to spend. Don't borrow money to go spend and to have the walima on interest. In other words, you can borrow without interest. Yeah.
Thank you, Imam
Anything to add?
Patel. Sister Rufaida, you want to add anything to what Imam Patel has mentioned?
Sorry, I'm good. I think he's done, mashallah, a very thorough job.
Yeah. So thank you, Sister Rufaida. So now, the khutbah has happened. The khutbatun nikah has happened, and the walima has happened. So we congratulate the bride and groom, Mr. and Mrs., and off they go on a honeymoon. And while they are on a honeymoon, we take a short break and come back and talk about post-honeymoon. There's a number of important issues that we would like to talk about. And please hold on to your questions. They're very important. Today, we are trying to meet our timings, our timing deadlines that we have. We are trying to keep within our timings. And so it's important that, we follow the timings and hold on to your questions, and we will discuss your questions after the presentations, inshallah ta'ala. So with that, I'm going to say, can we meet again at 1 o'clock? In 5 minutes, 1 o'clock, please take a short break, and we'll come and talk about post-honeymoon after that with some important topics to discuss. Jazakallah khairan. Welcome back. Jazakallah khairan. And again, as I said, we have some important items to talk about. It's going to be the real life now, life after nikah. Honeymoon phase is over, and we are getting into now settling down. And here I would like to bring in Sister Rufaida. Sister Rufaida, I know you have a lot to talk about life after nikah. And if you can please take this on, life after nikah. Sister Rufaida.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So this next section is quite interesting. And I'm asking participants that are on the line on Zoom, and then of course those that are in person, to unmute yourselves, because I'm going to try and make this a little bit more interactive. So unmute yourselves, your microphones, if you don't mind, because I'm going to be posing some questions. So the last time we kind of talked about in the previous workshop, what is marriage? And we came to an understanding that, it's a formal union, right? Marriage is a social union, it's a legal union, and the union itself is solidified by a legal binding contract. And the union itself is influenced by economic, psychological, emotional, biological, and social aspects of our lives. And so we've come to understand that marriage is a process, right? We're moving through a process, but it's not a science. And so could anyone maybe unmute yourselves and help me understand when I say it's not a science, what I mean by that?
This is Qari Shahinur on the line.
Yep.
Assalamu alaikum.
It's not complicated. Like, you don't have to think too much about it.
When I say it's not a science?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That's Brother Lamar, right?
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. And Brother Qari Shah, you had also a comment?
Yes, assalamu alaikum. So your question was, it is not a science, it's a process. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so it being a process, I'm going to suggest that to keep it very, very simple. For example, the way Dr. Abdul Hamid and Dr. Abdul Hai have been expressing from the very beginning is keep it simple, keep it straightforward, like is described in the verse in Surah Ahzab. So at the end of the day, you and your spouse communicate with each other as to what is each other's level of comfort in every single aspect. What is each other's level of understanding in every aspect, and understand each other's limits. So it's a simple advice that I give, I follow for myself and I teach my students is know your limit and stay within it. So, and what does that mean is that understand what your limit is with regards to everything. Your limit as far as comfort is concerned, your limit as far as understanding is concerned, your limit as far as education is concerned, your limit as far as finances is concerned, and everything in between and above and beyond. So, so now, as far as everything goes, when you're going through your journey in life, right? The verses that Rasulullah chose are so beautiful. They're very succinct and very, very to the point, but there's a lot of depth in them. So when we look at the verse of Surah Rum, where he said, where the Quran says, mawaddatan wa rahma, this mawadda is only between husband and wife. And then when that mawadda, that is a special type of love. So when that mawadda comes, then automatically the mercy comes. But you can only do that if you are understanding each other and you're going through the process, like you just finished saying. But you can only do that if you stay within the limit, so that you're not stretching yourself, you're not overwhelming yourself, that now next thing you know, you become a burden on each other and burden on everybody else. So anything you look at, stay within that limit, be it the honeymoon, be it residence after the fact, be it on a vacation, be it on anything, right? Be it on furnishing your house, be it on buying a car, everything. So long as you stay within that limit, then you can go through the process of life that you are able to grow with each other and have an understanding with each other and support each other. So
beautifully said.
Parisa, yeah, if you can limit your comments, that would be much appreciated.
I was just finished.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's really insightful. And, you know, mashallah, as well as Brother Lamar, thank you. Like, these are really great means of identifying and articulating the difference between a process which is ongoing. So marriage is a process, it's ongoing, right? It ebbs and flows, and we're learning as we kind of move through the different stages of a marriage, right? Nothing is particularly written in stone per se as to, you know, like, you know, we should do more of this or less of that, or, you know, and veering away from the understanding of a science is like, you know, baking a cake is like a science, right? You do very specific measurements of, you know, 2 eggs exactly, and a half a pound of butter and a cup of sugar, and this is the result that you're going to get, right? That's why we have recipes, right? Because like baking is a science. When you put too much butter, you're going to get this result. When you put 2 less eggs, you get this result. So it's very much a science, but marriage is not like that. It's not a specific measurement that you follow and you're going to be guaranteed this results every time you bake with that recipe. It's not the case. It changes people. It changes the dynamics of the relationship. So it is a process. You are learning at every stage, right? You know, when we think about life after the nikah, you know, we're essentially thinking about, you know, interesting things that happen. Like, we're no longer that single person, you know, going and coming as we please, or, you know, we want to go hang out with friends or come back and, like, you know, all hours of the evening, and, you know, something else happens, right? We're considering another person, but there's something interesting and wonderful that happens from that union too. And I wanted to, again, ask people to unmute themselves, and just a couple of answers I'm looking for, you know, what is it that we look forward to after the nikah? If anybody can shout out just a couple of things. What do we look forward to being a newly married couple? So the honeymoon phase, what does that look like for us?
Going places.
Nice. Give me another one.
Just like doing daily tasks together.
Beautiful. Expand on that. Tell me more.
Like, for example, even if it's just cooking or like household chores or grocery shopping, just being able to do that together and bouncing ideas off of each other.
Nice. Ariana, right?
Yes.
Beautiful. Excellent. Yeah, because even the simple things like making breakfast becomes a really lovely kind of pleasant moment, right? You're in the kitchen, you're both making tea together, or coffee, you're making breakfast, pancakes. You're discovering, like, I like certain pancakes, and you make it for him, and, you know, he likes certain, you know, eggs, and he makes it for you, and you're, wow, like, you're exploring, right? This is the honeymoon phase. Like, excellent. Going places together, you know, going to the movies together, you know, going in and just enjoying life, right? Amazing, beautiful. Excellent. Well done. And so there's also this adjustment phase, right? The give and take, the settling down that happens, right? Where you're now learning that, you know, you may share a vehicle, right? And you're both working. So you have to kind of like be able to accommodate each other's needs, right? Because you might be living together in a condo, somebody might be able to travel one way, but the other person's going the other direction. Who gets the car on which days, right? So there's a little bit more compromise. There is an adjustment here. There's the give and take, the settling down. And so I just wanted to point out one quick item that you can maybe look up on your own and explore on your own. But it's called, the phase of team development. And I liken this model to, the adjustment phase that a couple, encounters in the first, year of marriage per se. And I'm just gonna, with your permission, as a group, I'm just gonna share my screen for a minute. Hopefully I'll be able to just go through this very, very quickly. So here is the model, right? So Bruce Tuckerman in 1965 is an educational psychologist, right? And he observed like group behavior. He came up with this model, and it's the forming, storming, norming, performing group development. Somebody added another one, which is the morning, but this is exactly what the model looks like. So it's the forming, right? The storming, the norming, performing, and adjourning. That's basically what it's called. And so the phases of team development I'm just going to focus on is the forming, right? The very first year where there's, questions to be asked, right? You're socializing to a new environment, you're socializing to each other. This is really geared to like a business model, but I'm dumbing it down a bit so it can match the purpose of the topic. There's maybe eagerness to support one another. Maybe there's more conversation. Maybe there's, to try to find ways of working together. But then something interesting happens, guys. The storming happens. And this is what, it's the give and take. It's the settling down, right? Not everything's going to be hunky-dory. There may be times where situations arise and you're trying to figure out like what is going on, right? So there might be resistance, there might be conflict, there might be competition, there might be high emotions, right? There may be, when I say competition, for time, for attention, right? You're working late all the time. I make dinner and I'm waiting for you, and then I have to like put away the dinner because you don't get home until late. And I have to go to bed because I have to be up early, right? There's this ongoing kind of competition for each other's time, right? And then eventually there is the norming, which is the reconciliation, right? There is the resolve of like, this is what we need to do, and this is how we're going to have to manage some of our situations and issues. And then there's the performing, which is the second to last stage, where balance. There's an achievement of balance, right? Until the next blip comes along, which is where like kids come along. And now the whole thing starts over again, the forming, the storming, the norming, right? So these are kind of like phases that we continue to go through, right? And that's, when I talk about, just the adjustment, the give and take, the settling down. So as we move into our next slide, we were thinking about, and that the Tuckerman's model is just food for thought. You can explore it a little bit later, but it's really about bringing some, concepts for you to consider, right? And these workshops are a discussion, right? We are discussing the issues. So it can bring to light some information that you might want to keep in mind moving through the marriage process. So the key to a successful marriage. So, and one of his signs is that he created for you spouses from amongst yourselves so that you might take comfort in them. And he has placed between you love and mercy. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is directly saying the concept of love and mercy. Love and mercy, right? That we have to lower that wing of mercy to one another in order to get along, in order to move through our marriage, right? That is incumbent on us. It is not the I, because we have an I society, iPhone, right? We have drive-through, which is instant gratification. We can go to any kind of fast food restaurant and get an instant meal. We can even have it delivered to our house, Uber Eats, right? It's the I society, right? And this is moving towards, having mercy towards one another, having love for one another, where you're finding the balance between each other. So next slide, please. So as we move through, we think about, some of the common problems, but even before looking at this list, and actually, let's go back to the other slide. I apologize. Thank you. Oh, no, the other way. Excellent. Sorry, I shouldn't have introduced that slide yet. So again, unmuting yourselves. Tell me, everyone here, tell me some of the common problems that you encounter in marriage. Just shout them out, just 2 responses. 2 or 3 responses. Some of the common issues that we encounter in marriages.
Compromise.
Yes, excellent. Another one.
One becomes a burden on the other.
Right. Okay. Yes, because of what they need from the marriage, right? Or from the other person.
Lack of communication.
Lack of communication. Yes, excellent. One more. Anyone?
Like just for example, working through past traumas that kind of resurface in marriage that you weren't even aware of. So you kind of have to do your own healing.
Nailed it. Yes, excellent. Okay, so now we can go to the next slide. Great. Okay, so common problems. So here's a list of common problems, right? Lack of sincerity, lack of ikhlas, lack of sincerity, communication issues, being unfaithful, difference in values, jealousy, bad habits, addictions, financial issues, time management, like work schedules, right? Lack of intimacy, family interference, right? And so we won't be able to kind of like go through each of these and kind of tease and work through them. That might be a workshop in the future. But we do know that some of these items can be a conversation prior to marriage, right? When you are in that pre-marital stage where you are having those discussions, you're going to ask, what is your values? You're going to ask directly, right? Truthfully, honestly, right? How do you manage finances? How do you anticipate that we will manage finances, right? When you think about your career, where does that rank in the relationship? Is it the priority, right? Is there an expectation that I will support your relationship, that your career, sorry. How will you support my career, right? Is there any habits that you have? So you smoke, right? I smoke a pack a day. He or she might say, I smoke a pack a day. Are you okay with that? This person is being truthful. Are you okay with that? Is it something that you contend with? Can you help this individual? Can they help you work through that addiction, right? So you are being absolutely honest. And I introduced a concept before, and I'm mindful of my time, is that, who is sitting at your marriage table, right? We are seeing that family interference. And I think, Brother Kari Shah brought up blurred lines the last time, right? The blurred lines between relationships. And so, we've got in-laws and we've got a wife and we've got a husband, and then, the spouse is caught in between. So, these discussion items have to be paramount. Who sits at your marriage table? And the concept is that, you've got your mother-in-law, your sister-in-law, your brother, your neighbor. You've got like your best friend, you've got your family doctor. All of them sit at your marriage table because they all influence your marriage at different intensities. So you have to be aware of the positionality of these individuals and the influences they have. Not that it's bad. I'm not going to that place where it's bad because we're talking about common problems, but knowing where these individuals, who are important to you and you value, where do they sit at your marriage table, right? How closely? Because, some of us have a notion, me included, it's just me and my husband at this marriage table and it's low. No. There are other people at your marriage table that influence your marriage. So be mindful of that. And so, we are 21st century thinkers, right? What I mean by that is that we traverse the biopsychosocial model. I introduced that in the last workshop, where we are influenced by a number of factors, right? Our biopsychosocial model is influenced by culture. It's influenced by religion. It's influenced by education. It's influenced by our careers. And so we are navigating all of these spaces, right? But what it comes down to, the common problems and how we resolve them, is, what are our core values? And that is the discussion that you need to have prior to marriage, is like, these are my core values. Both of you are identifying your essential foundational pieces that will structure your relationship moving forward, right? What is your obligation to each other? Maybe you have an obligation to, an elderly parent. Maybe there's an obligation, to other individuals, right? Iron those out, explain, discuss what that is. And then, let's move to the next slide, please. And when we talk about resolving issues, we talk about how we resolve issues amicably, right? And what does that mean? It means that, do we decide prior to marriage, again, that premarital discussion, how are we going to resolve issues? Are we going to sit down and discuss how the issue itself, right, sharing that vehicle to get to work in the morning, how it affects me psychologically? Because I'm in a rush, I'm in a panic, right? Not knowing who's going to have the vehicle, if there's enough gas, will I be able to get there on time, right? It affects me emotionally, financially, paying for gas, driving longer, shorter distances, right? Is it going to affect me physically, right? How does the issue affect us, right? How does it affect me? And then moving towards a solution, adopting a solution-focused lens. So we are thinking about, okay, what does our faith tell us in resolving this issue? How do we honor each other's values, the husband's values, the wife's values, the integrity? How do we preserve the person's dignity as we adopt a solution-focused lens to resolve the issues? What are the outcomes we want? Bearing in mind that we have to, make sure that the needs of the husband is met and the needs of the wife is met, right? So when we look at the outcome, we're ensuring that these specific outcomes that honor individuality are met. And as a couple, how do we ensure that, the outcomes as a couple is met, right? And how do we ensure that the network of people that surround them are also met, right? That's another aspect. Going back to that very instrumental question about blurred lines, right? So all of these considerations are necessary, and perhaps in the future we can do a particular workshop on conflict resolution. And then just, this slide really gets to, some really important aspects of a successful marriage, right? Having sincerity, showing love for each other, being grateful. We are living in, times that are uncertain times, right? So, recognizing the blessings we have, being forgiving, right? Being honest, right? Motivating each other to be the best that we are, right? This is what the relationship supports. So, and of course, communication, things like that. So, Jazakallah, thank you so much for allowing me to expand on these few slides. I'm going to hand it back, Bismillah, to Abdul Hamid to continue with the session. Thanks for the participation as well, guys. Appreciate that.
Jazakallah khairan, Sister Rufaida. I know there's a lot to talk about, both on the conflict aspect of it, as well as giving the tips for a successful marriage. But, in the interest of time, and please hold on to your questions, because we are going to discuss those questions after this segment. And so we are going to get into the rights and duties of both the partners, both the spouses, the husband as well as the wife. And to do that, I'm going to request Imam Patel to focus on that and to give us some suggestions and some nasiya on the rights of both the husband and the wife. Yes. Imam Patel.
Yes, thank you, Brother Abdul Hamid, and thank you, Sister Rufela, for giving a complete overview of some of the tips for the successful marriage. And as we talk about life after nikah, living with parent is not obligatory in Islam. That is something that Rasulullah said, you have to provide, according to Islam, a separate room in the same house or a separate apartment. That is, although it is better to stay and get mentored and relieves you of some responsibilities to stay with parents. It helps, especially with children. Living as a married couple in Canada or anywhere calls for lots of adjustment. It requires patience, tolerance, and rational approach. It is a reciprocal relationship, and responsibilities have to be shared. It is a shared responsibility, shared relationship. And as Rafeda said, the team building. So team is a teamwork together in the same house. When asked Rasulullah while what he did in the house, his wife Aisha radiallahu anha replied, he used to keep busy serving and helping members of the household. So not just outside the house, but in the household, he used to help cleaning, sewing. If something needs to be stitched, he used to do that. So when we talk about rights and duties, there are three aspects that I will be discussing. May not finish today if as more questions may come later on. So I would probably hold on and give you more time for that. There are three rights: mutual rights between the two spouses, husband's rights, and wife duties. These rights translate into following duties that the husband and wife owe to each other. Mutual duties that are mutual: to forgive each other's small mistakes. Forgiveness is a major component, major ingredient in marriage. Everybody makes mistakes, and how often we are ready to forgive. To provide emotional support in happiness and sadness. There are times that people go through different crises, whether it is work-related, job responsibilities, or some other family obligations that people may come upon one another. So how to emotionally support if we find some signs of dissension, some sign of confusion, tension, or so on, ask and clarify, let it out so that they understand and you can support each other. Say, understand your problem, understand your concern, and this is how you can do it. Sometimes your spouse can help you in dealing with your issues at work, especially you say you don't know what to do, how to make a decision. Boss has put me in a binding. And while discussing at home, is your best partner that you can say, yes, that you can discuss and emotionally support each other on any matters. To offer each other wholesome advice concerning obedience to Allah. Obedience to Allah does not mean that say, hey, you haven't prayed Zuhar, go and pray Zuhar now, then I will serve food. Or it says you've been too busy cooking or doing other things and miss your Zuhar, leaving it to the last minute. Those kind of conversation or choice of words can create conflict. So you have to remind each other, it says, oh, it's time for Zuhar, let's not meet Zuhar or Fajr or whatever other salat that we may be. Or it says, okay, today I haven't recited Quran. So can I have a few minutes? Let me finish my Quran. To keep each other's secrets, most important thing in marriage. Rasulullah said the worst stature with Allah on the day of judgment will be the man who they spread each other's secrets around. Famous. That men and women, they must not spread their own personal matter, personal life to others as well. And to pass the night with one another. That is also important, although depending on the night, does not mean that people who work night shift, that is violating any commands of Allah, but that at least you spend the night or time together in your personal time that you need with each other in bedroom or anywhere else that matter. So these are some of the mutual duties. The next slides that we can. Husband duties. To financially support, she does not have to work. So husband cannot live off the wife income. Wife, in whatever she earns, she is entitled to keep herself. That is her property, her own savings, whatever she may have. But the husband has to support, and that is what a lot of time people misunderstand about the verse Ar-Rijalu Qawwamuna 'ala Nisa. That husband has a 1 degree superior to the wife. No, it is the responsibilities that place on the husband to support the wife. That is the main thing that in Islam, that the financial right, financially support, she does not have to work to support him. This is a financial right which includes food, clothing, and other basic needs. To provide appropriate housing or separate room in the same house. If shared with parents or other family members, the wife has a right to privacy and comfort. This is also an Islamic requirement. What are these duties I'm saying is all in the light of Quran and Sunnah. Then to pay the mahar, which I discussed already, if not paid at the time of nikah, It is his solemn duty to Allah to treat his wife with kindness, honor, and patience. Also to keep her honorably or free her from the marital bond honorably, and to cause her no harm or grief. So wife abuse is prohibited in Islam. This part clearly says that there is no question of abuse, of emotional abuse, psychological abuse. I can talk another hour on these types of abuses. That is not allowed in Islam. The respect and love that it says, Sister Rufela may outline that as a key ingredient. And also, I mentioned about the Nikaah khutbah as well, that this is very important, that they must respect each other, not to abuse emotionally, psychologically, or physically. And in laws in this country deals with all three aspects, emotional and physical abuse as well. There are grounds for court to judge the divorce, separation, or annulment of marriage that can happen as well. So now we go to the next slide for the wife duties. Here is a Quranic verse. ولهن مثل الذي عليهن بالمعروف وللرجال عليهن درجة والله عزيز حكيم. And the women have rights over their husbands. So it is not a one-way street about rights. Often overlooked in a number of societies, especially in the part subcontinent, where they think their wife has no duties, or some of the Middle Eastern countries as well, that North African also, that the wife has no rights over wife. They have rights over their husband as regards living expenses, similar to those of their husbands over them as regards obedience and respect to what is reasonable, but men have a degree of over them, and Allah is over Almighty. Now, this is the part that people misunderstand. The men have a degree, they say. What degree? It is not any superiority, not over, that they can rule the wife, not to overrule the wife's conversation or anything. There is the right is that they have the obligation, as I mentioned in the previous slides, that they have to support the wife. They have to ensure that wife is happy. They have to ensure that there is a comfortable living. There is ensure that there is privacy. All those other rights that are prevalent, and even more that you can, depending on the country or society you are living in, or the environment you are living in, protection of all kinds is necessary. That is husband's responsibility, and that is the degree that Quran speaks of. Not now the wife's duties. Next slide. To manage the domestic affairs of the family. That is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, also sometimes misinterpreted. Kullukum ra'in wa kullukum mas'ulun an ra'iyatihi, aw kama qala sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That each one is a ruler in his house, in household, and they have a responsibility, just as a ruler or a prime minister or anyone has to see that the country is ruled properly. And that ruler is not necessarily the wife. It is a mutual relationship that both have, that you will be asked for. Just as a community will be asked of the ruler, say where they have had enough food, they have enough housing, enough things. In the same way, the wife's duty is also part of the house, as the head of the household, to manage the domestic affairs of the family, to be a partner in all decision making, to be the educator for the children. In the West, mother remains the first teacher during the entire childhood. Mother is the first school, they said. But here in Canada and some of the Western countries, it is so crucial that the children are with mother most of the time, and they learn from mother what mother does. Even from the time you get pregnant, it is said that the baby listens to the Quran, that if you are reading, baby also follows the salat, that your namaz you are praying as well, and other zikr that you may be doing. All those things, that baby in the womb is a learning process, begins from that once the soul is there in the womb. And that is also important, that after marriage, you notice that how the child becomes so obedient, so respectful, so follow the Quran and Sunnah, that it has impression, it has effects on that. So if you are reciting when you are pregnant, especially, do more recitation of the Quran, do more zikr when you get pregnant on that. So that is also education. And then what a mother teaches the child, to respect the father, respect the parents, respect grandparents, respect brothers, sisters, all this. It's all that is schooled by the mother, which you will observe. Balanced life, financial planning. Financial planning together, that is. Whatever is money you spend, you have a tab on each other's finances. It is not that says, I don't want to disclose what I have on my account. Yes, you can keep your account, as I said, whatever woman earns, if she has to, if she's working or she has another source of income from properties or anything that the woman may have invested, that is her own income that she is entitled to keep. But marriage is a shared responsibility, it's a shared relationship. So it is good to have. I'll give you an example how people sometimes exploit women, especially new Muslims, those who convert to Islam. They don't have much knowledge of Islam. So in one case years ago, there was one person who got married to a woman who converted to Islam. And then he said she was a nurse. So she had a good income and said, okay, marriage is a shared responsibility. Khadija radiallahu anha shared everything with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you must share your account with me. And what he turned out to be spent all the money that the woman had saved. He didn't have much income. And then it led to the breakup of the marriage eventually, that thing. Another person like that also got married, not knowing each other. The imam, even before the nikah, asked, they came to the masjid and said, we want to do a nikah. He said, you know each other well? He said, yeah, we have known. He says, how long have you known? He said, oh, just recently, but we want to do the nikah. So he, just after nikah, that's why those questions that were there in our first, second session are so important, that he turned out to be a drug dealer, which she didn't know. So as soon as they got married, he didn't have a car, so she drove her car and killed somebody in Toronto. And then before the police come, he took the passport and fled the country. So these are things that happen in real life over here, that many instances I can quote what people have abused and not having a proper relationship in marriage or proper information that you have on background. So financial planning together helps a lot. So it's okay, where to invest our money, where to use our money, spending our money, how much groceries we need to buy, what we need to spend on clothing for children, for ourselves. All that is important. Making a will and power of attorney, that will be in the last session that I will be talking, because it is so important. Rasulullah said in a hadith that that person is not amongst us who dies, who sleeps without making a will. Yeah. So wasiyah is very important in life that you make, so that you don't know what can happen. And what happened in this COVID, that people were dying so suddenly, not expecting death. And there was one example I can give you, because I just want to make you realize by these examples. When the COVID started in 2019, I think, in March or so, one of the first victims was a wife of a husband. They were new immigrants in Canada. And he said, well, she's in isolation in the basement, but now I may get COVID too, and I may die. What will happen to my children? We have no family here, no friends. We are new immigrants, just came into this country, and now afflicted with COVID. So what can happen? So he wanted to make a will. So he called one of our partner organization, Muslim Children and Support. Can somebody help me to make a will about my children? What we can specify. So it is very important. I will talk about that more, inshallah, in the coming session. Drop and pick up children from daycare, school, or madrasa. That is a very important thing about balancing life. Who will pick up the children? Who will drop them in school? Who will take them to madrasa? Who will online madrasa used to be in the COVID time. There's still online madrasa, but now the people are gone back into person in most places. So you take them whether it is weekend or every day. All these things you need to work out your work schedule and so on. I know in my office sometimes says, oh, I can't stay today late because I have to do the cooking. The husband was saying, men were saying that, because it is not that, and that is one of the duties. The wife's duty is not cooking, is not Islamic duty. Many people don't know and don't understand. And when I speak that in the when I perform wedding ceremony, I feel threatened that I say many men would not let me out of this banquet hall. And sometimes people, even in a couple of occasions, men have come to my wife and asked, does he do cooking? He said, yeah, he's a good cook, but I won't let him because I make him too much mess. So it is something that cooking is not an Islamic duty of a wife. Remember that. But whatever she does out of her own will is a sawab, all blessings that she gets. And that is when we speak of marriage completes wife, completes our iman. It is that iman was not half or quarter before marriage. It is after marriage, all these other avenues opened up for each other to earn more blessing, more sawab. And cooking is one of them. Raising children is another one, an avenue. Looking after each other is another blessing. All those having a loving relationship is a blessing. It says that to put morsel in each other's mouth is a sadaqah. Rasulullah is going to extend that part. That's yes, complete a sadaqah also. So this is, and also looking after parents is another obligation, another blessing for each of them. So doing household work, cleaning laundry, that is not wife duty either. That is also, again, we have to pitch in. Rasulullah used to help clean, sweep the house, taking children for sports and other recreational activities. That's also in marriage. And that is if you have children or people will have children, you say, okay, should we put children into sports? Yes, sports is one way to keep the children busy. And that has become so important nowadays because otherwise they'll look for other avenues to be busy as well, or not getting into the wrong company or so on. So that also you need to work out that what sports they can choose. It's not you choose for them. And another thing that I will be talking later on is about choosing the career for children. It's become such a problem. Parents choose, every parent wants child. I think we may not have time to talk about all this balance in life. So that will be part of, I think we may give some time to the questions. What do you think? Because I still have some more duties or some more things to discuss on balance in life. And one thing, just as I mentioned, that choosing career, a lot of time university, I'm a chaplain at University of Toronto. And many times students come to me, even from other universities and colleges in the community. They say, my parents ruined my life. They say, why? Most parents want them to become doctor or lawyer. And it says, I didn't have any interest in becoming a doctor or lawyer. It said, now I'm settled. I couldn't get into the med school, so I have to settle with degree in life science. And that is not what I wanted. So this is something that children's career can be ruined by the parents by choosing a course. People don't realize that in this country, there are many jobs that are paying more. I'm not just talking about trade. Even trades pay more over here than anything else, even the regular white collar jobs. So, but the other in businesses, in humanity, there are high paying jobs and better life than life of a lawyer or a doctor. So there are also all those things that people have to consider. I think Sister Rufela can talk more about this, and Dr. Abdul Hamid also have come across many cases. So I think we should stop and give time for questions because people have already put some questions in the chart. We'll continue this in the beginning of the next one because some more things to talk about in this.
Thank you so much, Imam Patel. We really appreciate your insight into having a balanced life, and we will talk a little bit more in our next session as well. We will continue to talk about it actually. And so I think it's about time that we got into those questions. I know there's a number of questions out there, and if anybody here on the floor has any questions, we would certainly try and entertain them and respond to the questions. Can we go to what are some of the issues that could arise if you prolong the nikah? So that's a question that has come, and I know we talked about it. Imam Patel also alluded to it, some of the issues that come up. And so Imam Patel, you want to sort of add a little bit more on that?
What does prolong means? Means that nikah ceremony is prolonged, or the after engagement, you wait 6 months to a year. That also, and I addressed that part that people prolong the nikah, they just engage. Sometimes I address the part that they do the nikah and rukhsati, or the getting to live together is delayed or deferred for a year, sometime, or 2 years until graduation is done. So that is prolonging nikah. It depends on the situation, whether it is money that matters, or the job, or that somebody may be working in another town to come back. So it all depends on individual situation. But once you are engaged, it is not to prolong the nikah so long, because then you get into some kind of a wrong relationship after that, the waiting, because people start meeting each other over here in this society. That is not difficult to do that. So once engagement is done, there's a saying in Indo-Pak subcontinent, always a quick engagement and a quick nikah. Jet mani patviya in Urdu, as they say. Yeah. So sooner it is done, it is the better, but it all depends on the family situation, that you have to evaluate that what is best, what is the best interest of the family.
No, thank you on that. And I had alluded to it as well, that it's better not to extend the nikah or the gap for too long. I mean, as soon as somebody, you know each other, it would be better to sort of get into going forward with the nikah and the ceremony itself. I mean, do not extend it too much, because there could be, we have seen lots of challenges as a result of the extension, what they call from the engagement time to the nikah time. Even that, if once it's agreed upon, it is best to sort of move forward and do the nikah and the rukhsati and the ceremony, because there are many issues that come up if it is not addressed at that time. There was a question at the beginning from the sister here. Sister, you wanted to ask a question at the beginning? Do you have that? Okay. So I have a question here. And I'm going to read this. It's a 2 or 3 questions combined together. It says, is it Islamically halal to see a man or woman on Muslim dating application? 1. Is it also halal to date those people practically? I don't know what it means practically. In person and meeting them. And is it also halal to make a relationship for monetary reasons? Which Imam Patel has already alluded to some of these questions. But if you want to add something to it, and if Sister Rufeda, you want to add something to it.
Go ahead, Sister Rufeda.
Yeah, I'll hand this to Imam Patel just in terms of the rulings. So
well, I already explained in the, if you were listening, that dating is, I mean, the word dating, Western concept, that dating is in Islam, you can meet your spouse, but as I said, in the presence of a mahram, with even who are not adult children, also you can have in the presence, so that you don't get into any kind of wrong activity when you're meeting each other. So that is also, or meet in a public place also, that can be accepted, because you are in public, so you won't be doing much anything, but keep the social distance. That's a big problem. When public or in private, where you're meeting, keep the social distance between. The social distance was not so much popular as it happened in the pandemic, and that is so important in life, that between the opposite gender. Islam said 1400 years ago about keeping the social distance, and not just in time of pandemic, but at other times as well. So you can meet in person, keep your social distance. And the dating apps, that is something that people, there are a lot of pros and cons of dating through the apps. Perhaps Rufeda can add something, or Hamid, about this, but people, sometimes it's very difficult to know the person. Often they show the wrong picture. Like, and I'm not talking about apps, but once I had an email, I get sometimes wrong emails to a lot of them, spam. Yeah, that this young lady, beautiful young lady, picture says, I'm a refugee, Syrian refugee, and I need to come to Canada, please guide me. I said, well, you have to go, where are you, first of all? They said, you go into another next neighboring country, Jordan or anywhere, and then it says, you can go to the Canadian embassy and apply for refugee status, or have, if someone or an NGO here sponsor, these are rules. Then later it says, no, I'm in Nigeria, and right away that clicked. It wasn't even the late, it was some other scams that were there. So people have gotten, they have been robbed of money. They just sort of try to exploit you and by asking for more money, and says, yes, we will get together. So you have dating apps, there are a lot of dangers. And I'm not an expert to speak on these things here. You have to know who you are properly after dating up, sometimes they want to say, okay, we can meet in person if it is local. And they meet and then they discover that it's not the same person that I have talked. So yes, as long as you are courageous enough to meet somebody in public place, as I said, and find out about the background of that person enough, it's not just a stranger. So this is where a lot of problems come in without doing due diligence in that time. You can't marry somebody for monetary reason. That is not a reason to marry. And if you do that, that's a selfishness. And what that is not love that brings that into marriage. So the marriage won't last, it is the money. You can't blackmail. We have talked about the mahar, and it's not a dowry. So never use that word dowry. Dowry is connotation is what is used in, especially in a number of countries, especially Indo-Pak subcontinent, that the woman pays the man. And husband then blackmails the person, say, look, bring more money, more money. And the things they use when they demand money from the wife, they say, oh, it is for your own daughter that you are picking to make her life come. But that is no reason that wife doesn't have to pay anything to husband to get married in Islam. It is.
So, Imam Patel, I know we talked about this, but there's a point that has come up from that, and it is to do with the question is, it was mentioned that once you have decided to get married, delaying the wedding is not recommended, as other issues may come up. Aren't these issues important indicators of character that we need to know before marriage? And I think that's an important question that has come up. But, if I may, it is said that even when people are in love, it is said love is blind and you only start seeing after marriage. So there's a lot of characteristics that are not really open. So, one has to be very careful in identifying what the characteristics are and what the personality of the other person is. And, extending that, you may not be able to do justice to being able to know what the personality of that person is. And that's the reason, like, the encouragement to marry early after it has been decided. If you want to add, or Sister Rufeda, you want to add something to it?
No, just going back to just, like the critical conversations that have to happen, before marriage, and we talked about it in workshop 1 and 2 is essentially, having your list of items, that make a difference for you, right? So, whether that is family relations or, your education or, how many children, when to have children, like, just your kind of like your must-haves, your things that you can kind of like pseudo, not necessarily a deal breaker. And then, of course, things that, you can kind of like change your mind about, maybe it's where you're going to live or, given the circumstance, right? Somebody might be in postgraduate studies or, and so you're willing to move, countries or, so it's just having a list of like items that you want to discuss that it's integral to you to know. And some excellent points were raised in discussion earlier. So just having that as your premarital discussion.
Yeah, and we discussed some really good questions at the last workshop. And so I think it is important. I mean, we will have a recording of those questions available pretty soon. There's a question here from the floor.
Yes, so I just had 2 questions.
Yeah.
So first, is the rukhsati more of a cultural thing or is it tied into Islam?
Good question. Is rukhsati more into a cultural thing or tied into Islam? Imam Patel?
Well, Islamically, there is nothing like that as a rukhsati. Once you get married, the husband and wife obligations start, as I said. So whether you get together a week later or 6 months later, depending on the individual situation. For example, if you say, okay, I can't get an apartment for another 6 months. So can we just wait? So that Islam is flexible in many sense, in that sense. But what has become more cultural practice nowadays is his parents, as I mentioned, he says, okay, they are dating already. They are meeting each other. So let's get them married. So they won't do anything haram. But forgetting the other obligations of Islam, that the husband and a number of other duties that I have described, And that is also part that they're ignoring. So the delaying rukhsati is cultural aspect, but is not necessarily encouraged. I think unless there are some individual circumstances that is a cause of delay. But it has become more common now in Europe, here in the Caribbean, in other countries, America as well. So that's something that people sometimes it breaks up before even they get together.
Mhm.
Yeah, that is the other danger because they don't know each other enough. After their marriage, you say, okay, now we can meet each other, we can talk each other on the phone. And I know my engagement has been broken off for delaying like that. People have, because now they understand each other better and say, no, I don't think we are meant for each other. So before, and that kind of puts a stigma on, especially the woman's life, that, oh, she was married and now her marriage was broken up. So nobody wants to marry her. This kind of things happen, which we should avoid in the society.
Yeah, another question?
Yeah, my second question was, is a micro or macro, like, which would be like the sunnah, like a micro wedding or like a macro wedding?
He started.
You know, as I said, I mean, we attended a very simple sunnah, type sunnah wedding, just the nikah, a few people. There were some witnesses to the wedding, and it really felt good that this was a good, and you felt that there was barakah in this wedding, right? So I know during the time, Imam Sahib, you can talk about, during the time of the Prophet, there were different types of weddings that
Well,
took place.
Rasul said the minimum expense is more going in light of sunnah. That don't go overboard to spend for showing off in the society that your wedding was grand wedding, if you can't afford especially. So that's why it is not encouraged to have a big wedding, because people go sometimes borrow money on interest and other things to have, just to show off that the big wedding, big reception. So it is to avoid all that, is less the thing is better. Now, one thing about the walima that I forgot to mention, that walima, Rasulullah said that Ansaar he got married. He says, okay, have we done the walima? I said, let's go and do walima. So Rasulullah encouraged walima. He said, okay, it's good that you enjoy that festive occasion by having walima. But what happens in the walima, one part that is that I didn't mention was there is always a fight about the gifts, the money received among not so much the bride and groom, but among the two parents, the in-laws. Who keeps the gifts? Nowadays, it's mostly no gift boxes, mostly cash that people give. And that is okay. The father will say, oh, I spent this much money on your walima, or your tell the daughter, and the money came in, now I have to pay off that. No, this money given is really for the bride or the groom. It is their property. So you can't really ask, says, okay, that you should pay for this. But yes, if they agree that, okay, we will share the expenses and so on. So there is no fight. Sometimes the one family will say, oh, we want to keep the gifts or the parent money. I know with gifts in those early days, there was only gift, not much cash was given in most Muslim communities. That people always, they had a fight, who keeps the gifts. And even so the dispute, it breaks up the marriage. It happened right after the nikah is performed, outside the gate of the banquet hall. Marriages have broken up. So these are things that we'll talk about their last session about divorce, that what some of the factors, but that is something that you should keep in mind at walima about, because when you spend money on walima, you have to agree and says, okay, how the expenses is going to be met, and who will be sharing this. So those are things that need to be worked out.
Yeah. The questions that we addressed at the beginning, that, these are some of the things when organizing or planning for the micro or macro wedding, these are some of the things that have to be sorted out prior to, the event happening, so that it's very clear. Otherwise, it becomes an issue of contention. On walima, there is a question here, Imam Sahib.
Yeah.
Is it mandatory to do the deed before walima?
What you said deed means?
Consuming the marriage.
Consuming the marriage, yes, it is that is how the walima is supposed to be. It's the next day after the marriage. So over here now, a lot of time, nikah is done and walima is delayed because they are not together sometimes. The other part is that sometimes they had the marriage is consummated, walima is delayed. It all depends on the individual situation, but the preferred way is the marriage after consummation is what walima, the rejoice, festival is. But things can vary. There is no really, I mean, command to say that, okay, marriage must be consummated, but it is implied here that yes, consummation after the walima is day after. Yeah.
There's another question, and I'm going to just very briefly respond to that as well. It says, is there anything in Islam about the groom giving the bride something at the time of consummation of the marriage, such as gift of seeing her for the first time? I believe that is a cultural thing. It is, the gift that is given is the mahar that belongs to the bride, and the other things are all cultural items that have come along for a very, very long time.
And more to give your wife, it's better.
Yeah, if you give your wife a gift,
especially what she likes. Yeah.
Yeah, and make her happy.
Yeah. So that is not just on that wedding night. It has to be continued.
Yes, not just one time.
Yeah.
It has to be given regularly.
Yeah.
I know we are over time. Any final questions here from the floor? Yeah. No. We are good.
So in terms of the entertainment, the wedding,
Yeah.
Imam Patel was saying something about like singing girls. Is that like halal or is that?
Well, that's what time of Medina this practice was there, that a girl used to sing at wedding, and singing is not prohibited as long as it is not with like a whole orchestra you have there with all the singers, and depends on what song you sing. That's another thing. It is singing in praise or in occasion that matches in compliance with the wedding purpose, marriage purpose, that they congratulating the bride and groom. Nothing prohibited in that sense.
So it's authentic.
Yeah, that's a hadith of the Prophet. Yeah.
Even poetry was being recited.
Actually, Imam Ghazali in his book, he writes about the occasion of singing. If permitted, both men and women can sing as well. Women can sing also in wedding. But the different schools of thought, different culture have different way of interpreting what it is, what entertainment it is. You have to really understand that, okay, this, as I mentioned clearly, check the boundaries of Islam in entertainment. That is where the question comes in. Once decide that it is not prohibited, not something that is seductive, something not that is kind of leading them to do anything wrong. But nowadays, people seem to defy the Islamic way and have right after nikah, it says, okay, now the first dance is husband and wife. And I have seen this happen among the learned circles. This is happening in Toronto, what I'm witnessing in GTA. That their parents are helpless. The youngsters want to do it. The bride, the parents couldn't do anything, and it brings embarrassment to the family. So what entertainment you choose, you have to respect your family's tradition. Family Islam is the main thing, that you respect Islamic boundaries. But at the same time, the parents should not be shamed for doing something or arranging something that they will feel after the wedding. It becomes a talk of the community, talk of the town about, they say, hey, these people had this un-Islamic things and they did that. And some parents have been so disgusted, it's emotionally draining on them, that I have my own children did this at their wedding without my knowledge. So that kind of breaks the relationship with parents as well. I know father walked out after her daughter and her new husband started dancing in the center. He says, I can't stand this thing here.
So the important point here is keep within Islamic boundaries, whatever it is, whatever type of entertainment, and there is difference of opinion regarding some of these issues, but keep within the Islamic rulings and Islamic boundaries. I think that's the important message that we would like to,
A lot of cultural practices prevail in many of the weddings, carrying the bride in arms to the car and all this, hiding the shoes for money and all this. So these are all cultural things, which some are good cultural practices, good entertainment for people, others are not.
So I know we have gone way over our allotted time. And so inshallah, we will continue this discussion in our next session. That's going to be next week. And it's going to be on Sunday. This time it's going to be Sunday, October the 9th at 12 p.m. once again. And we will have both in person as well as virtual session as well. And so if someone has, or if someone you know has any marriage related issues, and if you want to talk to Imam Patel or get some guidance through either Sister Rufaida or myself, please contact the Ansaar Foundation office for guidance and schedule an appointment. With that, I know, as I said, the next session is October 9th, Sunday. We'll talk about, and it's an important one, we'll talk about respectable marriage or devilish divorce. Respectable marriage or devilish divorce. And also talk about prenuptial contract and some conflict resolution suggestions. So with that, I would like to end today's session, and I will request Imam Patel to say the final dua, please.
درود شريف اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آل محمد وبارك وسلم. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين.
آمين.
ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار.
آمين.
ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب.
آمين.
ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما.
آمين.
اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا شر ما قضيت فإنك تقضي ولا يقضى إنه لا يذل من واليت ولا يعز من عليت تبارك ربنا وتعالى نستغفر ونتوب إليك وصلى الله على النبي الكريم. Allah, we thank you for all the blessings that you have given us in our life, have given us good health and a good life so far. Allah, we are not able to thank you fully for all the blessings you have showered upon us. Thank you for bringing us together on this Ansaar platform to help people make their life better by choosing their spouse and make their married life happier and better. Bless each and everyone who participated here today, and the speakers and all those who have helped plan and contributed all this time, all the volunteers, everyone. Ya Allah, bless each and every one of us. Bless, Ya Allah, our parents as well that we have lived and raised us. Oh Allah, as you said, that don't forget the womb that bore us. Ya Allah, help us to respect each other in the society. Help us to improve the relationship. Help us to unite us together and grant us all the blessings in this world and in the hereafter. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursalin walhamdulillah.
Jazakallah khairan. And there is, whoever is here, there is pizza available. I would therefore encourage people to come here so that we can have, some good times. Please help yourself. Please,
Yes.
please make yourself comfortable. Jazakallah khairan.
And if any question,
Yes, yes. Yeah. Sure. So we will have the two previous sessions available pretty soon. We are just polishing them, editing them a little bit because there was a lot of, some issues. So once it's edited, it's going to be posted. Yeah, and it will also be posted on the website as well. Yeah, AnsarFoundation.com.
Yeah. And if any